welcome to the deep dive. So you sent us some really interesting sources about becoming a cell tower technician, specifically without needing a college degree.
Yeah, that's right.
And we thought, okay, let's do a deep dive just for you, really pull out the important bits on this career path.
Absolutely. We've got like a collection of articles here, and they mostly map out how you'd enter the field, mainly through apprenticeships.
Right, the apprenticeship angle.
Yeah, and the big appeal, like you said, is, the potential for a pretty solid income, a skilled trade, without that 4-year degree hanging over you.
Makes sense.
So our mission here is basically to give you the essentials. What's the job really like day to day? How do you actually get started? What's the money situation? And what's the long-term potential look like?
Perfect. Just a clear picture for someone looking for maybe a more direct route into a trade.
Exactly. Straightforward and effective.
Okay, so let's start at the ground level maybe, or maybe the top level. What does a cell tower tech actually do? My first thought is always just heights. Scary heights.
Well, yeah, the height thing is definitely real. Fundamentally, the job is about installing, maintaining, and sometimes repairing all that critical gear on communication towers.
What kind of gear are we talking?
Things like antennas, transmitters, receivers, basically all the hardware that makes our phones and data work. And yeah, it's mostly located way up high.
How high is way up high?
Often between, say, 100 and maybe 500 feet, sometimes even more. So yeah, working at height is a huge part of it.
Wow. Okay, 500 feet. That's significant. What's involved up there? Just climbing.
Well, climbing safely is step one. They use really specific safety harnesses, specialized climbing gear, everything designed for working safely at altitude. Safety is like the #1 priority.
I should hope so.
And the tech they're handling, it's always evolving. Right now, a lot of it is 5G hardware, LTE stuff, the latest network tech.
And are they always local or?
The sources suggest quite a bit of travel is common, could be regional, maybe even national, depending on the company and the project. And it's pretty much 100% on-site work, no office job here.
Right, definitely out in the field. So, climbing, installing new tech. What else?
A big piece is troubleshooting. When signals drop or equipment isn't working right, they're the ones who have to figure out why and fix it.
Diagnostics at 300 feet. Fun.
Yeah, and again, the articles really hammer home the need for following strict safety protocols. Always. Up there, with that equipment, there's just no margin for error.
Absolutely makes sense. The risks are obvious.
So yeah, it's a culture built around safety.
It sounds like you need a certain type of person for this. Physically fit, obviously. Comfortable with heights is a must, as the articles keep saying. And just like a really strong sense of responsibility for safety.
Exactly.
So for you listening, that's maybe the first big question. Does that description, those conditions, does that sound like something you'd actually, want to do? Does it resonate?
That's the crucial first filter, yeah. Now, assuming it does sound interesting, how do you break in without that college degree? And the sources are pretty unified on this. Apprenticeships are the main way.
Okay, apprenticeships. That's the key part for avoiding the student debt, right? The earn while you learn ideal.
Precisely.
So what kinds of programs are out there? Are there different types?
Yeah, the sources point to a few main ones. First up, and maybe the most well-known, is the Telecommunications Tower Technician Apprenticeship, or TTT.
TT, got it.
This one's backed by NATE, the National Association of Tower Erectors, and also TIRAP, which is the Telecommunications Industry Registered Apprenticeship Program.
NATE and TIRAP. Okay, sounds official.
Oh.
What's the structure like?
It's pretty comprehensive, usually runs about 12 to 24 months, so 1 to 2 years of combined learning and on-the-job training.
And what about pay during that time? Are you earning?
Yes, definitely. The typical range mentioned is somewhere between $18 and $25 per hour during the apprenticeship. But that can vary, depending on where you are in the specific employer.
Okay, $18 to $25 an hour while learning. Not bad. And then what happens after you complete the program? What's the payoff?
That's where you see a pretty significant jump. The article suggests starting salaries after finishing could be anywhere from, say, $55,000 to $80,000 a year.
Wow, okay. $55K to $80K starting.
Yeah. And then with more experience, plus, things like overtime, travel stipends if you're on the road a lot, that number could push over $100,000 eventually.
That's a serious potential income, especially coming straight from an apprenticeship.
It really is. It shows the value placed on the skills.
So what do you need to get into a NATREP program? What are the basic requirements?
Okay, the essentials are you got to be at least 18. High school diploma or a GED is required. Need a valid driver's license that seems standard given the travel.
Makes sense.
Physically fit is a big one. Able to lift, 50 pounds or more, often while you're actually climbing. And like we said, definitely no fear of heights. That's a non-starter.
Right. Can't be afraid of the main workplace.
Exactly. And then the usual stuff for safety-sensitive jobs. Pass a background check, pass a drug test.
Okay, seems pretty reasonable overall. And the travel aspect, is that guaranteed with this NATORAP path?
The sources consistently paint it as a travel-heavy career, like 100% on-site work, moving around to different tower locations.
So something to really consider if you like being on the move or if you prefer staying put.
Definitely. And it's worth mentioning, big industry names, think AT&T, Crown Castle, Ericsson. They often hire graduates from this NATORAP program, so it clearly has strong industry recognition.
Okay, that sounds like a very established, well-regarded route. What's the next type of program mentioned?
The second main path is through programs linked with the Wireless Infrastructure Association, or WIA.
WIA. Okay.
These often partner up with, community colleges or local workforce development groups to deliver the training.
How are these WIA programs different from the NATORAP one?
Well, the length can vary more. You might find shorter boot camps, maybe just 8 weeks long, that are really intensive, or they might have more structured apprenticeships lasting 1 or 2 years, similar to NATORAP.
And the pay during training?
Generally a bit lower, maybe $60 to $22 an hour is typical. And something important to note, some of those really short boot camps might actually be unpaid initially.
Unpaid? Why would someone choose that?
The trade-off is often direct job placement. So you do the short, intense, maybe unpaid training, but they basically guarantee you a job interview or even a position right after. It's a faster track to employment.
Okay. So weigh the unpaid training against getting a job faster. What about salary after a WIA program?
Entry-level pay seems to be in the range of roughly $50,000 to $75,000 a year, so maybe starting a little lower than the top end of NATORAP, but still very solid.
And the entry requirements? Similar.
Broadly similar. No degree needed, obviously. Some might require you to do a basic physical assessment or maybe even a quick climbing test to see if you're comfortable. Basic math and reading skills are usually assumed too.
So WIA sounds potentially faster, maybe slightly less initial pay, but still gets you into the field effectively.
Yeah, that seems like a fair summary. They often focus on speed, faster training, quicker placement. Good if you want to start earning sooner.
Okay, and what was the third main option highlighted in the sources?
The third route is through private apprenticeship programs run directly by companies in the industry. Apex Site Solutions Tower Technician Apprenticeship was mentioned as one example.
So directly with the employer from day one.
Exactly. These tend to be a bit shorter again, maybe 6 to 12 months, and they're very focused on the on-the-job training model. You learn by doing directly with the company's crews.
And the pay during these company programs?
Seems competitive, actually. The range mentioned was often around $20 to $24 per hour.
Okay. And after completing one of these private apprenticeships?
Post-program salaries look to be somewhere in the $60,000 to $85,000 range annually, though this can depend more heavily on the specific company, their location, the kind of contracts they have, that sort of thing.
Makes sense. Any specific requirements for these company programs?
A key one is usually passing their own internal climbing training and getting certified by them. And again, ability to travel is almost always required, plus passing the drug test and background check. Standard stuff.
So this might not always be like a formal state-registered apprenticeship, maybe?
Yeah.
But it's still a direct path to working for that specific company.
Precisely. It's a very direct way in. Get hired, get trained on the job, start working relatively quickly.
And you mentioned some other names briefly?
Yeah. The sources also gave a nod to programs like T-Mobile's TechX Initiative and also Airstream's Renewables. So it shows there are quite a few players offering training pathways.
Okay. This paints a really clear picture of the how. Multiple apprenticeship routes, all bypassing the traditional degree path. So once someone gets in, gets some experience, what's the future look like? Is this a long-term career?
It definitely seems positioned as one. The sources sound quite positive about the long-term prospects. Think about the constant push for 5G expansion, all the talk about satellite internet, improving rural broadband.
Right. The demand for connectivity isn't going away.
Yeah, exactly. All that requires skilled technicians to build and maintain the infrastructure. So the demand looks pretty sustained.
And within the career itself, can you move up?
Yeah.
Or are you mostly climbing towers forever?
No, there's definitely room for growth. The articles list several potential advancement paths for experienced techs.
Like what?
You could become a crew leader or team supervisor, managing other technicians. You might move into safety, becoming a field safety trainer, passing on that crucial knowledge.
Okay.
Or specialize technically, like becoming an RF technician that's radio frequency, dealing more with the signal optimization side of things.
Gotcha.
Project management in telecom is another option, overseeing bigger installation or grade projects. And with everything converging, specializing in fiber optic splicing is another related skill that's really in demand.
So lots of different directions you could take based on interest and expertise. Leadership, safety, technical specialization.
Yeah, seems like it. And there are newer areas driving demand, too. Things like private networks for large companies, smart city infrastructure projects, the whole Internet of Things explosion.
Right, all needing wireless infrastructure.
Exactly. All needing the skills these technicians have. So it's not just maintaining the old stuff, it's building out for all these new applications, too.
So the job itself might even change over time as the tech evolves.
Very likely. Which makes it potentially quite a dynamic field long-term if you're willing to keep learning.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up for you, our listener. If you're hearing this and thinking, yeah, this might be for me, what are the absolute key takeaways? What should you be thinking about next?
I think the biggest takeaway is that this is a real viable path to a well-paying, hands-on career, and you don't need that 4-year degree. The apprenticeship model is your entry point, earn while you learn, is the key phrase.
Right. So if you're someone who likes physical work, maybe enjoys travel or at least doesn't mind it, and you want to get paid to learn skills that are genuinely in demand, skills that keep our world connected, this seems like a very strong contender.
Absolutely. If that description fits, your next step is probably digging into those specific apprenticeship programs we talked about.
The NATO wrap one.
Right. The WIA options, check with local community colleges maybe.
And the private company programs like Apex Site Solutions was mentioned, but others likely exist too.
Exactly. And look into those others mentioned, like T-Mobile TechX, Airstream's Renewables. Do some research on which might be available near you or fit what you're looking for.
And just one last time, the absolute basic requirements to even start looking.
Generally, 18 years old, high school or GED, valid driver's license, physically fit, okay with heights, and able to pass the background check and drug test. Pretty consistent baseline.
Okay, that feels like a really solid, actionable summary. Physically demanding, yes, but potentially really rewarding, especially financially, without the college debt.
For sure. It's a skilled trade, it's needed, and there are clear ways in through these apprenticeships.
So as you, our listener, think about all this, here's maybe a final thought to chew on, something we didn't really get into from the sources, but seems relevant. With wireless tech changing so fast, 5G now, 6G on the horizon, satellites, everything, how do you think this job, the day-to-day work of a cell tower tech, might actually change in the next, say, 10 years? What new skills might become super important down the line? Something to consider as you explore this potentially dynamic career.
Good question to ponder.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.